Welcome back for another episode of the Big O Podcast. I am your host, Julian Ortiz, and today's guest is one of my brothers in the podcasting world, loving husband and father, one half of the Good Rookies podcast, and a guy who may need an agent after dabbling in some on-screen NBA TV content. Please welcome Faheem the Dream Francis. Faheem, how are you doing today?
Oh, I like the intro. Nice. No, I'm good. Thanks for having me. It's gonna be fun.
I have had maybe 4 episodes that, for whatever reason, have not seen the light of day, whether it's connection issues, whether it's downloading issues. And you're now recording I think it's like 5th episode, and only 2 have actually aired. You've been part of 3 of them that have not seen the light of day. Right. But we're doing it again. We're going to have some fun. We're going to have some fun topics. But have you experienced any challenges other than maybe having your daughter on your lap during your Donovan Bennett episode, of any issues when it comes to recording and not being able to put forward any episodes?
Not putting forward any episodes. No, actually once, but the episode technically didn't happen. We were supposed to have a guest on. And a guest hit us back, said, "Yeah, I'm excited. I'll be there." And we were waiting at our recording time. Half an hour goes by, an hour goes by, hit the person back, no answer. So we recorded. That went out, and then the person hit us back 2 days later and said, "Oh, sorry about that." We're like, okay. So we said we'll reschedule. It wasn't a big deal. They set up another date a week later, and recording time comes, half an hour. At half an hour, we said, okay, you know what? This person's not coming. I don't know what they're doing. So we recorded, and it actually did go out. But yeah, that's the biggest odd situation I've had in podcasting.
I mean, it's good that you have a partner, right? Like, you and Nelly J can do it together. So if you don't have someone come in and bail out the last second, you can at least still put some content forward. I remember one experience of mine. I had a guest, and 10 minutes before, we'd been talking for like weeks, days, the morning before, 10 minutes before the podcast was supposed to record, he hit me back and he was like, "You know what? At the end of the day, I actually can't do this," and gave me no reason as to why. And it was probably the most devastated I've ever been, because I was looking forward to speaking with the guest. I invested a lot of time into this guest, more so than I probably have any other person. And then to just get told at the last second, by the way, I can't do it, and then get no reason as to why, was definitely one of the most hurtful things. And I'm not going to put him on blast. He's a fairly important person, at least his brother is, and he shares the same last name. But I mean, what were you feeling when, not just once but 2 times, you had that guest bail on you? Would you ever consider having that guest come back for a 3rd try, or is it kind of like, fool me once, shame on me, fool me once, shame on you? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah, I was definitely, even after, actually, so like you said, I work with a partner, Nelly J. It's my co-host. Shout out to Nelly J. After the first time, she was a little bitter, because she had spoken to that person that morning, right?
Right.
So, and then she apparently through text had got to the person maybe about 2 hours before record time. So when they didn't show up the first time, she was the one. Actually, I more had to convince her to say, you know what, something could have happened. Let's give this person another shot, But after the second time, I was like, okay, well, I don't even want, bitter. It just comes down to, it does come down to just a respect thing.
For sure.
And everyone has their reasons, but it's not that hard. If you don't want to do the podcast, simply say so.
Yeah. I mean, I've gotten rejection letters, people saying straight up, or their publicist saying it's not something that we're interested in doing. If they say check back with me, of course I'm going to check back with you, right?
Right.
But you're putting that out there. If you don't want to do it, just say, "I'm good. Thank you for the offer. My feelings aren't going to be hurt. I'm just someone trying to have a conversation. You don't want to do it? That's totally fine." But I agree with you. It's a respect thing. Why, if you're going to bail, or even if something comes up, there's still something about sending a text message. I have this conversation with my wife all of the time. If she is going somewhere and she says, "I am going to be home by X amount of time," I'm going to be home at 9:00, and it's 9:00 and I haven't heard from you, I have an expectation that you're going to say, "Hey, something came up. I'm a little bit delayed, but I will be home soon," or "I am still wherever I am." It's just a respect thing. I do the same thing with her. If you're not going to communicate that, then you're just showing that my time is more valuable than yours, meaning I am more important than you are. And in some cases, that's not the case, but in their mind it is. And it's unfortunate. Do you ever run into, things like this with your lovely significant other, which I'm going to talk about briefly in just a second?
No. When I'm like the same deal in regards to, usually we're good in regards to communication. If we're running late, that's fine. Yeah, if I'm out, I'll give her text. We actually communicate pretty regularly. So if something was off, she would know, and vice versa. So nothing.
Now, speaking of your amazing, lovely partner, prior to recording, there was some fun dramatics that went on.
Oh, you're gonna put me on blast right now
to get you ready. And it's funny because you started with, every time I want to watch TV, the remote goes missing. And I can't say that I can blame my young daughter, but it's somebody else that always loses the TV. Really putting the spotlight on your lovely lady. And then we're like 3 minutes before recording, and your lighting is all jacked up, and who do you call but your lovely wife to come in, swoop in, and save the day? Not that she's going to listen to the Big O podcast, but is there something that you want to tell her right now, get off your chest, and, make things right?
Well, I want to say, you know what, all jokes aside, I do this to my wife all the time. She's a good sport about it. She gives it back, so we're good. But I do want to say, you know what, like, shout out to my wife. Shout out to your wife also. You're going through a very special time right now. I'll say that.
Indeed.
So, but yeah, my wife, I want to say, my wife knows she's special, and she actually makes things tick with our podcast because we record at night. Our daughter goes to bed. We usually record in the evenings when we record. Daughter goes to bed, and my wife really does everything within her power to make sure that the setting is right for the podcast to happen. If she wasn't here, I don't know how we would be able to with a young daughter. So shout out to my wife. She's special.
Listen, I get it. I mean, my wife, the exact same thing, cut from the same cloth. She knows I'm putting the kids to bed. I'm usually doing dinner time for them too. And if it's late at night, I'll do the bath. But when it comes to like post 9:30, give daddy like an hour and a half to do his thing. We, yield his magic and know that if something goes wrong, as soon as I'm done, I'm putting on the Superman cape and I'm taking care of it. My wife, the same thing though, loses the remote all of the time, but she blames the young kids for it. I secretly know it's her. She's not fooling me at any time, especially when it's always like underneath her. And no disrespect to my wife, she's pregnant. We are having, by the time this airs, we will be, a couple days away from having our third child enter this world. Shout out to moms everywhere. I mean, your wife went through it at the beginning of COVID. You guys had, I don't want to say a COVID baby, but I mean, during the era of COVID, what was that like? Obviously we're coming hopefully on the other end of things, but what was it like in the beginning of COVID where no one really knew what was going on, and how did you find adjusting to all of the major changes that were going on in the world around you?
Well, I could say for the first, I kind of felt like when our daughter was born, April 1st. So that's really around the time where we were actually in the Western side here, just really embracing the fact that like this COVID thing is not just an overseas thing. Like it's,
right.
It's affecting us. So a lot of things in regards to even being there's a protocol. I didn't know it's the first time being a father where, the amount of people that can actually be there when your child's being delivered. It was kind of up in the air in regards to, well, are we allowing extra people in there? Are we not allowing people? So it's kind of like a makeshift thing. I happened to be there when my daughter was born. But I'd say it definitely was an adjustment. Her being born at that time, lockdowns going through. This is kind of a unique situation also because due to lockdown, it's been unfortunate, but it kind of it worked well for us because of the fact that it gave us a lot of time to be at home with our daughter. If COVID didn't happen, perhaps the situation might have been different where I would have been out working and doing other things, right? So.
Yeah, it's interesting because on the other side, you know, I've had two daughters pre-COVID, so we were fairly familiar with what the routine might have been. But now, due to COVID, obviously things have changed. I can be there for the birth. I'm only allowed to leave the hospital once for the day, so I can go home and then come back. I can't have anybody change up with me, which is what we did with our second daughter, because we needed someone to look after our oldest one. So now our kids are going to be away from both parents for 3 days, having surgery Monday, coming home on Wednesday afternoon/evening. So for 3 days, you know, they're going to see dad for maybe an hour every other day, but no mom for 3 days. And that for me is a little bit concerning. You know, having kids who are attached to parents, our youngest daughter is very attached to my wife. And to the point where if she goes outside to like my backyard, she will begin to cry because she's like, why didn't you take me with you? So we're very concerned over the attachment issues that are coming with that and what COVID measures are changing when it comes to the birth of our third child. It's a scary time. But fun nonetheless. Obviously, still an exciting time. Definitely looking forward to the challenges. What would you say the number one lesson you learned in your first year of being a parent?
Number one, wow, a lot. It's hard to pinpoint one. One thing. So being a parent, I've really learned. Well, patience is one for sure.
Right.
Definitely. Also, I'm prioritizing, you know, there's a lot of things that, you know, it was me and my wife. So it was just us. And now it's just like, well, things perhaps that we want to do that we otherwise would do that we can't do now.
Right.
Because we have responsibilities. So, yeah, it's a learning experience. Every day is something new, especially at this age right now. She just turned 1. So very for developmental. A lot of things at that age were like the baby that I see this morning is a lot different than the one I saw last month, 4 weeks ago.
Yeah.
There's things that she's doing now that she wasn't doing 4 weeks ago. So it's an exciting time, definitely.
100%. Listen, I've let this go on long enough. I need you to do me a favor and just back up off the camera for like 2 seconds and show everybody what you're wearing right now.
Oh.
And for my listeners, for people who are listening, Faheem the Dream Francis is rocking his Toronto Raptor sweatshirt. And I want to talk about this because during one of the unaired episodes of the Big O podcast featuring Nelly J and Faheem the Dream Francis, we talked about what we thought was going to happen with the Toronto Raptors going into this season. And one of the things that we talked about was, where were the Raptors going to finish? What were the Raptors season going to look like? Where were they going to finish? How deep were they going to be? And I believe you and I erred on the side of caution and reality. Believe Nelly J said that they were still going to be a top 4 team. I believe you had them in the top 8. And I think I was on the fence about, you know, looking at the way the East got better in the offseason and look at all of the subtractions for the Toronto Raptors. It was easy to see how they could be fighting for a playoff spot. Well, lo and behold, the Raptors have been eliminated from the 2021 NBA playoffs. They weren't even deep enough to make it into a play-in game situation. As a Raptor fan, you know, what are your thoughts on the Raptors season?
Wow, you're really laying that on really thick. You know,
I got to.
Held no punches back. My thoughts on the season. So, I do think. So I stand by what I think. I remember saying that we, over previous years, we were a top 4 team in the East. Going into the season, I kind of thought we were in the bottom half, 4 to 8. Preferably like 6 to 7 is what I think I thought. Like
right.
6 to 7. I still think that we're a 6 to 7 team if, and I'm going to throw this back to you, health really hurt the Raptors probably more than any team in the league. Is there any team that you could think of that had more different starting lineups, more key guys gone for the amount of time than Toronto Raptors in the league?
I'll give you one team, and I've
Okay.
always been a big proponent of this team, and you'll know it once I say it. I almost said New Jersey Nets, the Brooklyn Nets. I
Brooklyn
mean,
Nets,
if
right.
you look at James Harden, who comes in during the season and he's been out with injury, and Kevin Durant misses a stretch of games with
Right.
his hamstring, and Kyrie either through injury or through just taking time off to disappear and do his own thing and get mentally healthy. The Brooklyn Nets, when it
Fair
comes to who needs or who values health more for the success of their team, it's the Toronto Raptors. Toronto
Yes.
Raptors didn't have games to give away, because if Toronto ended up in like an 8th seed, no one's going to say, hey, they just need to get to the playoffs and they're going to shock the world. With
Right.
with the New Jersey Nets, with the Brooklyn Nets, Kevin Durant is going to win you a game in a 7-game series. James Harden can win it for you. Kyrie can win you a game. Boom, right there, you've won 3 games, and the other guys don't even need to really show up. Then you add in the Blake Griffins, and at one point the LaMarcus Aldridges, and then all of the key guys on that team, Shamit, Joe Harris, all of those guys. And you can say, okay, this is going to be a formidable opponent to go up. It's going to be a beast for anyone outside of Philly to take these guys down. Toronto Raptors' health crushed them, but it's not the most important factor as to why they didn't make the playoffs. It's for anybody who follows the NBA, they will know Toronto had to play their games in Tampa Bay. So they had zero home games in front of an amazing fan base or even a place that they call home. And I think that, partnered with their health challenges, especially when they lost a lot of their key players for that 3-4 game stretch post All-Star break, I think that's really what did them in. They went down with a fight, and they were trying, other than Kyle Lowry getting sat as a healthy scratch in his last game, which I thought was interesting. Definitely a lot of things to look at for the Toronto Raptors. I thought they would at some point make the playoffs, but there were just too many things factoring in against them.
Fair enough. I know. I agree with you. I agree. So I'm gonna ask this: if I see what you're saying with the home court, and I agree with you, but I'm gonna throw this out because we couldn't do anything about that. They really had no control over that. COVID kept them in Tampa. Fair enough. If this team is somewhat, because no team is completely healthy, but if they didn't have the breakdown of health that they had, do you still think that they'd be fighting to get into playoffs with the quality of what they had?
I think they would have ended up roughly around the same spot. And when I say that, I mean they'd be fighting for a 7 to 11 spot. I still think they're in that 4 spot range where they're not going to be a great seed. If you look at the way the NBA playoffs are shaken out with the Nets and the the Celtics and the Bucks, I mean the East is going to be formidable for anybody with not very much star talent. And the Raptors, we love Kyle Lowry, we love Freddie, we love OG, we traded away Norm during the season. They lacked star power. And anytime the Raptors really lacked star power, we ran into issues in the playoffs. It was the one thing that kept us from getting over the hump. And this was just another reason to see that without Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka, while we have guys like Chris Boucher and we had Terrence Davis, they were missing some key veteran leadership that took us to where we needed to go. I don't think it's all bad for the Raptors. They have Malachi Flynn. I think they're going to be okay. But now, and we've had this conversation with Anson Henry when we did the podcast, Nick Nurse is going to be under fire a little bit. His championship win, which is now far enough in the past of a couple of years, is only going to get him so far. Now we are going to see what he is able to do with the squad that he has and see if it was what Dwayne Casey before Nick Nurse did. Is it Masai who built this team and Nick Nurse just happened to be like a coach that got them to where they need to go, but not really the guy who puts them over the top? The next 2 to 3 years is going to be extremely important for the Raptors and for Nick Nurse. What do you think about that?
That's fair. I don't think he's on the hot seat though. I think he's proven enough for us to overlook the record of this season. I think you know, there's some things that were beyond his control. And I think he has enough credit of what he's proven with that championship year win. And then following it up even last year with, yes, a first round exit in the playoffs, but for the most part, a successful coaching season for him where people weren't on him for our failures last year, right? So this year, I mean, it's a one-off. Next year, I guess we can keep an eye on it, but it's kind of hard. You get rid of someone like Nick Nurse. It's kind of like if you remove Nick Nurse, you have to make sure you're upgrading. And I don't know a lot of coaches out here right now who have the credit at this moment to move Nick Nurse. Like, you know, Brad Stevens is a perfect example. He's someone who was loved in Boston. You know, that Boston team is stacked with talent. And now with Brad Stevens, I'm hearing rumblings of people being unhappy with Brad Stevens. I don't think we're there with Nick Nurse yet. I think there's a lot of time in between that now and getting to where they are with Brad Stevens.
So if you don't make the second round of the NBA playoffs 3 years in a row after winning the NBA championship, you know, let's say they don't make the playoffs at all next year. You know, at that point, the way that the team is structured with, you know, losing some other guys, you know, Kyle Lowry's gone at the end of this season. You have a little bit of a young core. Do you think it's inconceivable that going into the 2023 season or 2022-2023 season that Nick Nurse is not the coach of the Toronto Raptors if he misses the playoffs next season?
I still don't think we're there yet.
Okay.
Maybe I'll double down. I don't see us not making the playoffs next year. Like, I really think, I think this is kind of a one-off thing. If, you know, we get in next season, it's a new slate every year, you know. I think there's enough in regards to talent. Like Fred VanVleet is proven, Gary Trent is proven, OG is proven, Boucher stepped up. Like there's a lot of people in here. You notice I'm specifically not mentioning one person in particular.
I like it. I was going to ask you. I mean, what was once the darling and top MVP candidate post Kawhi Leonard. I mean, let's not forget.
Can we say pre-bubble when you say that?
Yeah, I was going to say before we got to the NBA bubble.
Okay,
he was in the conversation, certainly across the U.S. networks, obviously in Canada, but he was a top 5 NBA MVP candidate. And then the bubble happened, and in baseball we call it, you get the yips, where you basically just forget how to play the sport altogether. And Pascal Siakam has just never been the same since the NBA bubble. Sure, he's shown glimpses of finding his stroke, but realistically, the NBA bubble broke Pascal Siakam. Is that a fair thing to say, or would you phrase it another way?
No, I think you got it spot on. I think the NBA, it busted. The bubble popped on Pascal Siakam. Yeah. When the bubble busted, his career just like really, he's a shade. How do I say this without like sounding like rude and bitter? But like Pascal Siakam going into the bubble, he's still unproven, but he had, like, see, I was talking about credit. He had a lot of credit. He went to the finals with Kawhi. He was a good sidekick to Kawhi. This was his first, going, mind you, pre-bubble last year, his first year as being a franchise guy. We gave him, just off what he did the year before, gave him that credit. He comes in that year, up into the bubble, looking promising. Like, I remember having discussions with people saying, who's better, Jason Tatum or Pascal Siakam? I remember having those conversations pre-bubble. Like, that's where he was.
Yeah, I agree.
And you hit a nail in the head. The bubble came and, reminds me a lot of Nick Anderson. The story of Nick Anderson. You guys know about the story? Let me read. Nick Anderson, solid NBA player back when he played for the Orlando Magic. I think it was the Eastern Conference Finals. And goes to shoot 2 free throws. And those free throws could have iced it to win the game. Misses the 2 free throws. And those were monumental misses that cost them moving forward. After that year, Nick Anderson, he was a shade of himself, and he was out of the league in like 2-3 years after. sports is we always focus on physical abilities, but the mental aspect is key. And there's something that happened to Pascal mentally that I don't even know if something that we're privy to. It might be something off the court, who knows? But he's that fairy dust. It's gone.
It is time to talk about below the waist grooming. It has never been easier to take care of your package, and thanks to Manscaped, they have all of the necessary tools for your family jewels. Let's be honest, the last 18 months have been tough on everyone, but as we begin to return to normalcy, it is time that we ensure that when we finally unveil ourselves, we are looking and feeling our absolute best. Nothing says I came to play like a clean-cut workspace. Ladies, if you didn't receive the Mother's Day gift that you wanted, take control and get your man the tools to succeed so he can take care of your every need. With Father's Day just around the corner, Manscaped has got you covered with the best precision engineered tools. Manscaped has redesigned the electric trimmer. The Manscaped engineering team have perfected the greatest ball hair trimmer ever with the Lawnmower 3.0. This third generation trimmer features a cutting edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents. The waterproof technology allows you to groom in the shower, and one of the coolest features is the LED light, which illuminates grooming areas for a closer and more precise trimming. When I tell you this is premium, I mean premium. The battery will last up to 90 minutes, so you can take a longer shave. If you're watching or listening to this right now, I want you to click the link in the description and experience it for yourself firsthand. That's why Manscaped is offering 20% off and free shipping when you use the code TheBigO20 at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping. Just click the link in the description below and head over to manscaped.com. Make sure you use the code TheBigO20. Your balls will thank you. I couldn't agree more. And it actually brings me to another topic I wanted to talk to you about. I didn't flip it to you in the notes because I completely forgot, which is crazy. We talk about how quickly NBA or athletic careers can be over, whether it's injury, whether it's, case of Colin Kaepernick, the league just deciding that they're not going to have anything to do with you. We've seen over the last month or so, one of the most prolific quarterbacks in the NFL try to get his way out of Green Bay. Ooh. And so, the NFL, the not for long league, as it is widely called, because, running backs have a shelf life of maybe 5 years, quarterbacks 10, depending on what kind of quarterback you are. And it's a league where it's time to be selfish. It's time for you to get paid because they don't have guaranteed contracts. Aaron Rodgers has told the Green Bay Packers, or allegedly has told the Green Bay Packers, I don't want to be here. And if I do stay, I want the GM gone. And we've seen these type of moves done by various athletes over the course of the career in any sport that you look at. You've seen guys like Steve Francis refuse to play for Vancouver and decides that he wants to go play somewhere else. Eli Manning, draft day, gets drafted by the San Diego Chargers. He says, I'm never going to play there. He gets swapped for for Phillip Rivers. So we've seen this, but we haven't really seen a former MVP, current MVP, former Super Bowl winner say, listen, it's been nice, but Green Bay can't do it with you anymore. Deuces. I'd rather just go on the West Coast and host Jeopardy for the rest of my life because I make a damn good host taking over for the former Alex Trebek. What are your thoughts on what Aaron is doing out in Green Bay?
Rodgers. So he's for his age. You mentioned earlier about the NFL having short shelf lives for players, and it's true. I mean, but if you look at he's a seasoned veteran. I'm not sure the number. Do you know the number? How many years Aaron Rodgers has been around? I
know he's 30. I think he's like 35 or 36. Right. He got drafted probably around 21. So we're talking like 15 years.
Right. So he's actually at a point, he's exceeded a lot of, typical QBs in his mid 30s. It's about winding it down.
Yeah.
It's a unique situation for him opposed to say, Deshaun Watson, someone who's a young QB who's trying to force his way out of Houston But he's in his prime. So you know that he's not like it's not just a ploy. Like Deshaun Watson literally wants, if he doesn't play in Houston, his goal is to play somewhere else.
He may not play another snap of football ever again. Let's be
Ooh.
very. I mean, not
So
to.
you're saying no one's touching that. You're saying.
I'm saying because I didn't want to get into Deshaun Watson, but
Okay.
all I'll say about Deshaun Watson is he is in a very tough spot. And I
Yes.
don't think he has any control over what happens with his future. At one point he did,
Right.
and now I think he has completely lost any control that he has had because he's found if he's found guilty, he's done. If he cops to a plea, it
Which is
looks
probably going to happen.
which is like it could happen. It
Right.
also shows I mean, it can be interpreted as guilt because you didn't want to go down that road. I think there are very few positive options for Deshaun Watson outside of the cases being dropped. And the way that this has got media speculation going in the States, the fact that, it took over the better part of a month with all of the stuff and women coming out. I think Deshaun Watson's in a tough spot. I think he ultimately will end up on the commissioner's exempt list. I don't think he'll play another snap this year.
Really?
This year
Uh-huh.
for the Houston Texans
Hmm.
until this is one of those cases. He will never play football until his court battle is settled, one way or another. No team is going to trade for him. The NFL will not afford to let him play football. This is very reminiscent of the Adrian Peterson case from a few years ago when it came to the child abuse allegations and what
Right.
happened with him for that year. Deshaun Watson, tough, tough situation to be in. I don't like commenting only because I want to see what the facts are
Right.
because it's one of those things you get caught on the wrong side of it and it's not good for you. And I always say innocent until proven guilty, but I need to see everything before I can formulate my thoughts. What are your quick thoughts on Deshaun Watson's situation? And then let's double back to AA Ron.
Right. For Deshaun Watson. So I think the timing is uh, not to be like conspiracy theorist, but I find Deshaun Watson was on the cusp of doing something unheard of, like
Yep.
being a young player, treating the NFL much the way uh, James Harden treated the Rockets. And like basketball players just have the way they can move throughout their contracts that football players just don't. Ownership is they have all the power. He took on the power, and I find it kind of coincidental that here's someone who, if Deshaun Watson forces his way out of Houston, you're going to have a lot more NFL quarterbacks and running backs and receivers not being happy, doing the same thing. I think he's an example. Uh, the one person who's looking to do something groundbreaking, and then months later, speculation after speculation after speculation makes me think if he didn't want out of Houston, would we hear about these cases?
I've got my tinfoil hat on just the same way you do. This is what I was
Okay.
saying at the very beginning because
Uh,
I thought it was true. I thought, we'll bury things as long as you're playing with us. But the moment that
right.
someone decides they don't want to, well, oh, all of a sudden hear all these things. The only reason that I'm skeptical about this is just because of the severity and seriousness of what those allegations are.
Okay.
It just makes me pause because we're in the era now with the Me Too movement that we have to take every issue, every alleged allegation of things seriously because we've seen what happens when you don't take it seriously. We see what happens if you make judgment before facts come out. It's ended people's careers. People have gone on and said, hey, listen, Deshaun Watson is innocent, yada yada yada. These women are all out for this, that, and the other. And then it turns out to go the other way, and that person's canceled forever. We're in like the
Right.
heat of cancel culture. And I think it's only fair. We always say, facts need to come out in court, not the court of public opinion. And I think there's still so much of the story to be told on both sides that unfortunately I think his career is completely tied up with what happens in the courts. And as you said, he's definitely going to be made an example of to prevent quarterbacks like, I don't know, what's Lamar Jackson, maybe not the same star quality, but Dak Prescott or some of these up and coming quarterbacks to say, hey, listen, enjoy what we've given you and don't bite the hand that feeds you. And I think that's really what it comes down to.
So all I'm asking for is consistency,
Yep.
and keeping that same energy, because I just want to know where this energy was when the same type of allegations were against Ben Roethlisberger.
Yep.
Let's not forget. Or how about even Peyton Manning? Peyton Manning had an allegation, yes, with from college, his female physiotherapist.
Oh, okay. Tennessee. Okay.
Yes,
Gotcha.
that was haunting him through his career. Where was that energy for these quarterbacks? But now all of a sudden with Deshaun Watson, like trust me, it may sound like I'm defending Deshaun. I'm not. But what I am saying is I'm seeing a lot of inconsistencies that I don't like.
Right. And listen, and that's fair. I mean, the Ben Roethlisberger point is, spot on. The only thing I would say, and again, this is not a defense, but it is more of like a fact. I get very careful when it comes to these topics, but it really is a different era. If you were to look at it right now, and Ben Roethlisberger had all of these allegations come out, you're going to see things, treated in a different way than when it was back in the day. Because even though it was like 10 years ago, that's still another era before the Me Too movement even happened, before players were being held to the certain standard of the commissioner putting them on the exempt list and going through all of these things. I mean, Antonio Brown's a great example as well. Again, maybe because he's a little long in the tooth, he's not being held to the same standard that Deshaun Watson is being held accountable to now. But I mean, right. He lost out on playing games in the NFL, and it was only because Tom Brady decided, hey, Bill Belichick, let's sign this guy. Let's scare the shit out of the league, and let's go win a championship. And, he plays one game, then gets cut, and then wins the Super Bowl with Tom Brady in Tampa Bay last year.
Tampa Bay.
Tampa Bay is real. I don't know. I just feel like Deshaun Watson is going to be, as you said, it's going to be the example. We're going to see what ends up happening with him, and it's going to set precedent. The same way Patrick Mahomes set precedent with his huge contract. We're going to see Deshaun Watson and his football career be determined by what happens in the court of law. Now, for Aaron, is it okay for him to be wanting out of Green Bay the way that he has proceeded? I mean, if you look at every draft since he was drafted by Green Bay, they've taken one offensive player in the first round, and that was the backup quarterback, Mr. Love, who they took last year. Outside of that, always been defense, never been offense. Is it fair to say that Green Bay has not done what they needed to do in order to elevate Aaron Rodgers to a championship caliber consistently?
Yes. Even if you live in Green Bay, Wisconsin right now, I'm like, regardless of where you sit on this, everyone agrees that Green Bay could have done better by Aaron Rodgers. I don't know anyone who's saying like, oh no, like Aaron Rodgers, he's proven, right? Just the fact that he's coming out and doing this at his age, I like I said earlier, that's one of two things. He can retire at this age. If he retired in his mid-30s, there'd be no problem. Like, it's about his time. But he'd be retiring while he's still active and useful. So if it comes down to retiring or going elsewhere, actually, Nellie J had mentioned this to me, actually. She had said she thinks that he could do a Gronk, meaning retire, and then when he's retired, unretire and come back.
So I love Nelly J, but we're talking apples and oranges. And the reason I say this, right. Gronk had like a long history of like injuries. If you look at like the physical toll football has taken on him, it was way different. He was constantly getting hit on the line of scrimmage, heavy impact, shoulder, back, knee. Like, the guy tore it all and been beat up. And I think even getting, I think it was like a 5th round pick in the trade from New England to Tampa Bay, you realize he was never going to play for you. The bigger difference is that this guy just won the MVP for last season. He's proven that he is still among the top 5 quarterbacks in the league. He may arguably be like number 3 as far as most talented quarterbacks ever, as far as gifts. He's just a specimen. So I don't know how you're going to do that with and have him be traded for like a 5th round pick or not get the value that you need from a guy who can easily take a team to the Super Bowl or the playoffs next year.
Is it possible that he could retire and then unretire himself?
He could, but I mean, if he unretires, he is still under contract with the Green Bay Packers. If he retires, he's going to owe them $30 million, I think, over the 2 years.
That's hefty.
Over the 2 years, but he's going to be ineligible to come back, and Green Bay will continue to own his rights. I mean, he's made a ton of money, and I mean, who knows with endorsements if the game of football for him is about money. I mean, it's rumored that one of the things he wanted was a guaranteed contract or a longer term contract for some stability, but he could go host Jeopardy. Like, he could get a Tony Romo-esque job. He is so talented. He is funny. He could start a podcast. He could do like a YouTube show. He can basically do whatever he wants.
Right.
And so I don't think he'll be pressured to come back unless there is something that he gets out of it that he thinks is worth his while.
Fair enough. So I'm going to throw it to you then. Do you think he's going to be in a Green Bay Packers uniform to start an NFL season?
Oh, that's a great question. Okay, I'll answer this 2 ways. Do I want him to be in a Green Bay uniform next year? No. And it's not because I don't want him in the NFC. I want the player to win, because in the NFL, the owners hold so much of the ammunition. They hold all the cards. No guaranteed contracts, can cut you without notice, and you're in a world of trouble. I want to see a guy like Aaron Rodgers winning the MVP and say, listen, I'll retire. I'll go the Andrew Luck way. I'll take my money. I'll take whatever. Good luck with Jordan Love. Good luck with no offensive weapons. Good luck with having another terrible draft. And good luck trying to explain to your faithful team that you let one of the greatest quarterbacks to go for nothing. That's what I want to see. Do I think he'll be in Green Bay next year? Yes. I mean, if he wasn't traded by the draft or on draft night, I think it would have become harder to make a move work. A lot of capital when it comes to draft picks. It is still rumored that the Denver Broncos are the favored team to land him in a trade, and that they have been going back and forth over the last couple of weeks since the draft to try to make it work. Does he make Denver a Super Bowl caliber team? I don't think so. But, maybe he wants to go and play for John Elway and try to win a championship there, a la Peyton Manning. What do you think? With Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay next year, Aaron Rodgers playing in the NFL on another team, Aaron Rodgers as our host of Jeopardy?
So Jeopardy, no. But
okay.
Aaron Rodgers in a Green Bay uniform, yes. But another option which I don't understand is if I was Green Bay, I'd let Aaron Rodgers go.
Really?
No. Okay, the guy, he's MVP caliber. In regards to negotiation, if you put Aaron Rodgers on the market, you're going to get a pretty penny for what he has. You know what I'm saying? Like right now, if any other, you're going to get a lot of feelers. And in regards to negotiations, you can really milk the situation and build for the future. Because if you think about Aaron Rodgers, how many years do you have left of Aaron Rodgers?
I mean, I guess it depends on the team you go. But if you look at a team that's going to trade for Aaron Rodgers, they're going to give you first-round draft picks. You're going to be picking 25 to 30 in each of those draft years. Like, you're not going to get a top 10 pick from any team that's trading for Aaron Rodgers. Plus, if you're a team that's trading for Aaron Rodgers and you're giving up picks, you're likely giving back at least 2 starting players. Well, if you're giving up all of these things and it's going to take away from the team that you're now bringing Aaron Rodgers in to fix or to take you to the next level, I think it hurts you. So I think it actually scares away some of the better teams. Now, you might get a team that's been third place in their division, New York Jets, that'll give you a pick that if they're still trash, it could be something good. But is Aaron Rodgers going to want to go and play for the New York Jets? Is he going to want to go and play for the Detroit Lions? Is he going to want to go and play for the Tennessee Titans? Probably not. Like, these are probably all teams that he's not going to want to play for. And I guarantee he'll make that known that if I'm not going to one of these 5 teams, I will retire. And that will also scare players away.
Fair enough.
Fair. Well, speaking on, player potentially changing locations, another hot topic that recently came out was Major League Baseball has told the Oakland A's it's time to start looking for a new home in the event you cannot reach a deal with the city of Oakland. Now, Fox Sports analyst, MLB analyst Ben Verlander, yes, the brother of Justin Verlander of the Houston Astros, came out with an article a few weeks ago and suggested 5 cities that MLB could look to expand to. First, I'm going to give you these 5 names. I want you to say, of these 5 places, where do you think is the most likely relocation if they're going to move, and then whether or not you think that they will actually move. So coming in number 5, Portland, Oregon. Okay, that is the number 1 spot, or number 5 spot. They actually already have a group right now in the Pacific Northwest that is looking to bring a major league team in there. It actually makes sense for the West Coast teams when it comes to travel, helping out the Seattle Mariners. There is a strong baseball presence in Oregon. Could also lead to shifting around of divisions and making it a little bit whole. Number 4, Charlotte, North Carolina. They've had a AAA team there for years. The Charlotte Knights, which is a AAA affiliate of the Chicago White Sox. So again, we already have that built in. Number 3, the obvious sexy choice, Las Vegas, Nevada. Hockey team, football team, baseball team, soon to be NBA team. It makes a lot of sense for a lot of the reasons why other teams have moved there. Montreal, Canada, bring them back to the Big M because the way that they were done was pretty dirty. And then finally, number 1 on the list, Nashville, Tennessee. I believe you have spoken about this, or we have definitely talked about this. They've had a AAA team. They actually have a current group right now looking to bring the Nashville Stars, a throwback and homage to the Negro Leagues back in the day, I think from the 30s to the 50s, spearheaded by Justin Timberlake. Of those 5 cities, where do you think would be the best place for Major League Baseball to relocate? And then do you think that the Oakland A's will relocate?
Oakland A's, that's a franchise that's been around for as long as I can remember in Oakland. Wow. Them moving. So I do have a question in regards to Nashville. I thought Nashville was pretty much a done deal. Like, I thought they're already going to Nashville.
So there could be no done deal because they've talked about expansion, but they haven't really flirted with it. If there's anything that's going to stand in the way of expansion, it was definitely COVID-19. It definitely was the thing that put a lot of leagues in check. They have a group. Now, getting a group and getting the funding for a stadium is just one part of the pie.
Right.
But unless baseball is looking to expand, and they'll probably look to expand by 1 or 3 teams to just make an even number, you have to have viable spots. Or you have to have teams that are failing in the cities that they are. The Oakland A's, one team. The Tampa Bay Rays is another team. There are a bunch of teams that could get relocated. Securing a bid is great, but it doesn't guarantee anything. And I don't think Nashville has been guaranteed. They've just been in the midst of putting in the work and bringing in a lot of investors in order to make it happen. So, I mean, it's probably one of the top spots, if not the top spot. But as far as the certainty goes, it's not there yet.
Okay, so I'm going with if there's gonna be any one of these cities, it's gonna be Nashville. I think.
Okay.
I think Nashville, not only like Nashville, Tennessee. It's before in Tennessee they didn't really have much They had like the Titans in the NFL. Hockey, they have the Predators.
Okay.
But it's Nashville. Like Tennessee itself does not seem like a real hot spot for sports. They just recently got the MLS team.
Yep.
So Nashville, it's like I said, it's a hot spot. Nashville seems like having a baseball team, it would be a fit. So that's why I think the number 1 is. If not Nashville, the hottest team on here has got to be Vegas.
Of course,
Like
sexiest
you
team
put,
by far.
come on, you put anything in Vegas, it's going to be a winner.
I mean, it's funny you use the word winner because obviously, everyone's going to Vegas to try to win.
Right.
Um, and I think, listen, I think very few teams want to be the first unless you have real balls, right? Like
Hmm.
it's hard because with Vegas, there are so many things that you have to work around. Like you're not going to have a regular season ticket fan base. You're going to have a lot of
Right.
hotels that buy season tickets and use it as comps, right?
Hmm.
As for your one night stay here, also enjoy a hockey game on us or a basketball game or a football game or whatever these things are. And it's one way to draw, but you're not going to get the consistency that you are hoping for. I mean, people might drive out for the Las Vegas Raiders football game, maybe from Oakland or the LA area or maybe even Bakersfield, but to get consistent numbers in there, it's going to be tough as far as a fan base goes. Once one team gets in there and proves the model works, everyone's going to go. It is, I would say, within the next 10 years, they will have every major sports team. It makes sense.
Yeah.
Sports gambling is getting legalized in state. It makes a whole lot of sense. It makes a whole lot of sense for tourism. But again, the major caveat here with COVID-19, you don't have people coming to shows. You don't have the same draw that you once did. You may get there again, but it's going to take a little bit of time before you get back to the way business was. Sexiest team, it's Vegas. If I was a betting man, I would put Vegas in there. I think I agree with you. I think it's going to be Nashville if it moves, but I don't think Oakland's going anywhere. I think that team,
Mm.
as you said, for the longest time, all you know is Oakland A's. I think this is a great ploy. The Warriors got their new stadium in San Francisco. I think the A's will get their new waterfront property in Oakland. If you're Oakland, you
But
can't let your football team and your baseball team go. It just doesn't make any sense.
and also okay, and your basketball team also, because as you
Yes.
mentioned, the Warriors went. So what's the dynamic now? If Oakland, you say to keep them, mind you, Oakland people are leaving Oakland. See, I was mentioning how teams are going to Nashville.
Yeah.
Oakland is an exit strategy. Like Oakland, that's it's an old regime. People don't want to be there in regards to organizations. They're going over to San Francisco. Like the Golden State Warriors used to be in Oakland. Now they're in San Francisco. For baseball, it would make sense. Well, you know what? They're in Oakland. Send them over to San Francisco. Problem is, San Francisco's got the Giants already.
That's right.
So if you're baseball and you're in Oakland, it's either build it in Oakland, which is deteriorating, like its value is it's dropping. You got Oakland's gone. Like, how do you hold on to the team if you're in Oakland?
Man, if friend of the show, Jessica Kleinschmidt, is listening, she is not happy as the
Oh,
Bay
sorry, no
Area
need to,
sports
no need.
reporter. But I mean, for me, I think there's just a nostalgia for Oakland. I think, you got Moneyball, the movie, which really highlighted the sabermetrics and analytics of, founding of baseball
Yeah.
back in the early 2000s. I think they still have a great team. I still think that they have a great fan base. I honestly, in my heart of hearts, I think they find a way to make this deal works because the Oakland Raiders had a good fan base. The Warriors had a fan base once Steph Curry got there. But if
Right.
you look at the real heart and soul of Oakland, it's the baseball team. Because the Raiders went from LA back to Oakland to the LA back to Oakland. The Oakland A's are the heart and soul. And if they were to lose this, they would be in serious, serious trouble.
Hmm.
And those fans don't displace into other markets. They just lose out on that entire fan base that once supported this team in the grossest and crappiest of stadiums. They still show up to watch them play. And this is why I think after all of the things that they've lost, even though everyone is exiting Oakland like it has the plague, I think the Oakland A's end up staying in Oakland and find a way to make it work in a new stadium.
Okay, but in a new stadium, that's going to mean more money pumped into a depreciated property value. You know what I'm saying? Like
I got you.
I, you are right. Oakland, and if you're Oakland, the A's are the staple franchise. But the writing's on the wall. If everyone else is leaving and your only option is to pump more money in, like, let's be real. In that area, Oakland is seen as the hood and San Francisco is seen as the suburbs.
It's up and
And
coming.
up and coming, you know what I'm saying? Oakland's old, San Francisco's new. To think that they're going to pump the amount to build a new stadium into Oakland, California just does not seem probable to me. Sorry.
I mean, again, you just look at the history. It's
Yeah.
1968 they've been playing in Oakland. I mean,
Yeah.
it's again, I totally get it. I totally get it. It makes sense for them to relocate somewhere else. I just don't know if it's going to happen.
Right.
I mean, there is a project that has been put out there, the Howard Terminal Project, which privately funded will put in $1 billion. So if you're not going to the government, I think that helps. I think there's a plan that makes it work. Whether it works, I don't know, but I think that there's something that they find a way to make it happen. That's just my thoughts.
No, that's fair enough. It might be a band-aid though. I think you got to stop the bleeding, stitch it up, and keep it moving.
Speaking of stitching it up and keeping it moving, Jake Paul.
Oh, yes.
I've had arguments with people, friends, and we've talked about, publicity. Any publicity is good publicity. That's like the old saying.
Mm-hmm.
And what Jake Paul is doing, which we've seen, I think he's done 3 fights, 2 notable fights against former athletes or mixed martial artists, Nate Robinson, Ben Askren. We've seen him, make a mockery of those 2 opponents, and you can tell is taking it very seriously. And for that, I take no credit away from him. I give him all the credit. He's waking up every day. He's been boxing every day for like 2 years. He is taking this seriously. However, he is creating a circus around the sport of boxing. So while his pursuit of doing something is really good for the sport, his antics take away from that. And, we just had Floyd Mayweather and Logan Paul square off in front of each other as they have a June 16th date to fight in Florida.
I got your hat.
And
I got your hat.
Jake Paul, being the YouTube brat that he is, decided that he wanted to mix things up with Floyd Mayweather. And as you said, got his hat.
I got your hat. Oh
People say, was this fake? Was it real? It looked very real. I don't think it was fake, but my thing is, someone could have gotten really hurt. And this is like a la Conor McGregor, Khabib, post UFC, whatever it was, where there was like a melee, and leading up to it, there was like a trolley thrown at a bus. Like, I don't know if it's great for promoting fights, but I don't think it's good for the sport. Jake Paul's not even fighting. It's not even about him. Right? It's his brother Logan Paul and Floyd Mayweather, and they're talking about them fighting afterwards. I think there's so much to celebrate right now with Mike Tyson doing what he did at 50 plus years old, Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury finally getting ready to square off and do a back-to-back fights against each other, that I don't think the sport of boxing gets rejuvenated by young TikTokers and YouTube fans tuning in because Jake Paul is stirring it up with Floyd Mayweather. I don't think it's doing it any good. What do you think? Am I wrong here?
No, I mean, do I think it's doing any good? You make a fair point. So remember Tyson and the celebrity match Tyson had, Tyson and Roy Jones.
Yes.
So around that time, I remember having that same discussion. Like, do matches like this, like they're supposed to like, before I even get to this, let me say this. So there's UFC and there's boxing. In regards to popularity, like times have changed.
Let me stop you there.
Oh no, my MMA. Sorry,
there's boxing and there's MMA.
MMA. Sorry, my apologies. Right. Because yes, UFC is a brand of MMA, much like Bellator, and I do understand that. That's fine. That's fine. So there's MMA and boxing. MMA proves to be more popular than boxing right now.
For the last 10 years, I would say.
Fair enough. Like in today's climate, MMA is, and now I'll revert actually back to UFC because no one's really talking about Bellator.
Right.
You have to really understand the sport to even mention Bellator. A lot of people, casuals out there, they know UFC, they don't know
Right.
Bellator. Okay, but boxing, it's it's like mining. Like there's a lot of quality fights out there, but you really have to be in the loop to understand what the key fights are. Mainly because UFC is just doing, sorry, MMA, UFC is. Imagine that. Just the fact that we're mentioning UFC like it's a league, like NBA, NHL,
Yeah.
MLB, like that goes to speak to its branding. With boxing, you have the WBO, you have the WBA, you have the IBF, you have like all these different alphabet soup, titles out there that they're not really doing a great job of branding their product. So I want to salute UFC, even though I am a boxing guy. I do recognize that UFC is a much more appealing product to the casual.
I mean, we're talking marketing here. The
Mm-hmm.
UFC has marketed themselves better than anybody else. They were the
Yes,
first sport to return during the pandemic. They moved across the world to make it happen.
that's right.
They opened up in hotspots in the United States where they could. Vegas, Florida, just recently sold out Jacksonville for a huge fight between Kamaru Usman and Jorge Masvidal. They're continuing to move to Vegas in June or July, and they're selling out there too. The UFC has done a brilliant job of matchmaking and marketing. And the problem that boxing has is they have too many titles, too many weight classes, and not enough exposure. And part of that is because you'll hear about Deontay Wilder after he's 35-0 with 34 knockouts. But you've never heard of him with 34 fights before. Why? Because they're fighting like bean cans. They're fighting canned food. They're fighting nobody. They're fighting a punching bag that they're just putting out there to inflate that record and say, oh, okay, let's, this guy's 30-0, this guy's 35-0. Now let's make him fight. And
Mm-hmm.
Tyson Fury exposed that in the second match against Deontay Wilder. How many people know that Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury are fighting in back-to-back fights? Not very many people. We may know because we're not as casual with boxing or mixed martial arts or any of those things. We're pretty heavily invested in it. But the fact that casuals don't know that that's going on, but they know that come June 24th, there's a YouTuber versus TikTok boxing fight that's going on is
Right.
exactly the problem that boxing has. They can market a farce, but they can't market real champions for more than just the casual fan to buy. And I think it's the reason why boxing is going down.
Mm-hmm.
After the Triller episode and seeing Oscar De La Hoya on like every single drug imaginable, talk about his comeback after seeing Mike Tyson. It's a scary thing, and it doesn't make me feel good about where boxing, the sport, is going.
You make a great point. I want to double down on what you mentioned about boxing and ability to market itself properly. Canelo Alvarez just fought last weekend against Billy Joe Saunders.
Yep.
They fought in Dallas Stadium. They fought in front of 72,000 people. 72,000 people packed Dallas Stadium. If you follow boxing, like I watched that fight, 72,000 other people watched it, but it didn't circulate outside of boxing circles to think, hey, Canelo Alvarez is pound for pound the best boxer on the planet. And in his weight class fought Billy Joe Saunders, who's undefeated. And in that weight class, one of the top, like that was a monster match. And nobody cared. Like that was post pandemic. So since the reopening of sports, that 72,000 was the largest crowd that they've had since we've opened things back up. The third largest.
Yep.
At 72,000. People still don't know. You ask any, there's a fight last weekend, no one knows about it.
Again, we're talking marketing because Canelo Alvarez signed a major deal with DAZN.
Yes.
And if you don't know what a streaming company like DAZN is doing, you're going to miss out. And this is what the UFC does beautifully. The UFC has their station. They have their partnership with ESPN. You know that every other Saturday you can find a fight either live or on pay-per-view. There's so much in the market of sports with how many times they're putting out amazing content with great fighters weekend after weekend after weekend after weekend after weekend, that they just know Saturday night you can just assume that there is a UFC fight going on and it's going to be spectacular. I mean, we just saw Michelle Watterson fought on the last UFC main event, didn't come away with the W, but man, that was a barn burner. The 3 title fights at UFC, I don't know, 260, whatever it was, Usman, Masvidal, Shevchenko, Andrade, Rose Namajunas versus Weili Zhang. Bangers after bangers after bangers. That's what you can count on for the UFC. In boxing, you have to look forward to Jake Paul fighting against some retired MMA fighter. And you're going to have more eyes than that than you will on Tyson Fury fighting Anthony Joshua. And it's a travesty for the sport of boxing.
Yeah, boxing. Well, if you look at the history of boxing, it's always the weigh-ins. That it's always been about showmanship, because boxing is really it's a mano a mano, one-on-one, and boxers, much like wrestlers, they have to market themselves. You know what I'm saying? It's a business. It's sport, and it's sports and entertainment at its finest. So I understand even what that little prank they pulled with "I got your hat," which is what it was great for marketing, though. I'm not like.
Yeah, but is it going to sell more fights? Because I don't think it is. If it was between like Floyd and Logan Paul, maybe. But like Jake's not even fighting. And like I think that's, again, are more people tuning in because they like the ha of it all, or are they tuning in because like, oh, we can't wait for the guy's brother to fight Floyd Mayweather, who's like retired. He's got like a full lineup now, a hair that we've never seen before in his life. Like I don't know if that's bringing in more eyes to buy a fight than it would be any other time.
So full disclosure, I did not know that the "I got your hat" guy wasn't the guy he was fighting. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know the difference between the two. If I saw a picture of the two of them, I couldn't point at one and say you're Jake and you're Logan. To me, they're they're the same. So now that you brought that to light, that wasn't the guy he's fighting, it makes me really reevaluate the situation, because I didn't know. Right.
The most amazing thing is that the Paul brothers, you have one really good guy that's been trying to walk back his major misstep on YouTube, who's really like a good guy, who's like a baby. If we're talking wrestling, he's babyface. And then you have the younger brother, who was the Nickelodeon star growing up, who's on Disney TV, who's now the heel, tatted up, got your hat, tattooed, black eye, all of these things. It's a very interesting contrast that the two have with each other. But again, if it was Logan doing those things, I would look at it a little bit different. But it's Jake Paul, who's like not even fighting at all. Now, I want to quickly transition. Last thing I want to talk to you about, breaking today. So by the time this airs, it'll be a couple days. But Forbes just released its highest paid athletes over the last year. Okay. You might be surprised that the NBA had 2 players. You know who those 2 players are? Take a guess.
Highest paid. I know LeBron James is one.
LeBron James, number 5. Okay.
Wow.
Next one's number 10. Any idea who that might be?
Highest paid. Steph?
No. Kevin Durant.
KD,
number 10, $75 million. Tom Brady comes in at number 9. Lewis Hamilton, number 8. Roger Federer, number 7. Neymar, number 6. Dak Prescott, number 4. Ronaldo, number 3. Messi, number 2. Do you know who number 1 is?
Did you say Roger Federer already?
I did. I believe he was number 7.
No. Give me a sport.
Mixed martial arts.
Conor McGregor.
Conor Notorious McGregor.
The right.
Notorious. Coming in at a whopping $180 million.
And I think I know why. It has not so much to do what he did in the ring, but outside the ring with that whiskey he has.
It's a combination of both. I mean, he had he had one fight during that time. He fought Dustin Poirier. Previous to that, he had fought Donald Cerrone, but he gets paid quite a bit of money when it comes to the
But I think
UFC.
the whiskey deal was bigger than any deal he got. That
He started this whiskey deal or
right,
this whiskey brand and has grown it into $1 billion business. He actually, I'm pretty sure, just stole like 20% stock or whatever and made like a ton of money on it.
right.
But I think that it's very interesting that within like the last 10 years, this guy was collecting welfare in Ireland,
Wow.
cashing checks, barely had enough money for himself. And within like 10 years is the owner or creator of Proper 12 whiskey and Forbes #1 highest paid athlete. As much as people want to hate on Conor McGregor, obviously big fan, love Notorious, looking forward to his fight with Dustin Poirier for the trilogy. He is the UFC's cash cow. He is what they wanted from Ronda Rousey. Even with a loss, Conor McGregor is still the top draw of the UFC with everything that's going on. He could fight once or twice a year and it's not even going to matter. He's still the cash cow. What do you think that, for the first time, I believe that the UFC or mixed martial arts has the highest paid athlete, according to Forbes?
Well, one didn't know that. Yeah, it speaks to what we mentioned before, just about the UFC, just in regards to the come up. You mentioned the last 10 years, it's been more than boxing. And yeah, that's huge for the sport to see that you have the #1. Now, okay, real quick, I have to ask this though. He's the #1, right?
Yep.
Obviously, him losing, because he's coming off of 2 losses. Is he not? You
He
know better than me. I'm a boxing guy. You're more of
Donald
UFC.
Cerrone won in January,
Okay, and
lost against Dustin Poirier in the summertime.
okay, and what about Habib?
Habib was before Donald Cerrone. So he's lost 2 out of the last 3 fights.
Okay. So it's nice to see that he can maintain that top position and still lose, because usually people like winners, right?
Sure.
So this fact that he's still losing and he's still maintaining and his brand is not tarnished, salute to Conor McGregor.
You know what I find interesting? The last thing I want to say on this. No boxer in the top 10. Very interesting. And I think this really speaks to, if you look at the sports that are on this list of athletes, mixed martial arts has #1, more importantly, the UFC. Why? Because the UFC stayed active during that time. Great marketing, great extracurriculars. The NBA's got players, the NFL's got players. Roger Federer, just because, I'm pretty sure he doesn't need to play and he'd still get checks that keeps him in the top 10 forever.
Right.
Neymar, so soccer you got on here. I think Dak Prescott's probably the most interesting one for me, because
he's the one that, one of these friends is doing his own things, like one doesn't belong. Like, he doesn't seem like he belongs in this conversation.
Well, he got hurt, right? Like, he got hurt and didn't have a contract. He just signed a new contract.
Healthy, I just don't see him as like a top. He's getting the money. I just don't know if he deserves that kind of money. Would you? Yeah. Can you say he's the best at his position?
He's definitely not the best at his position, and there was definitely a funny meme that came out. The opening game of the NFL season was just released. Tampa Bay will be opening their back-to-back championship run against the Dallas Cowboys. Tampa Bay starting 1-0 because the Cowboys are trash, and I can't stand them.
Right.
But listen, it's interesting. I love the fact that Conor McGregor's up there. I love the fact that it's MMA. I think it's a perfect encapsulation of what the last 365 days have taught us with sports and returning. No NHL player on there, also very interesting, but Good NHL point. Players aren't in the highest paid. But this also takes into consideration endorsements. So it's very interesting to see guys without guaranteed contracts like Tom Brady, without like Dak Prescott, still find their way in the top 10, because it means they're doing so many other things around them. It's good for them as athletes, but we want to see some more diversity on this list. I will say 1, 2, 3, 4 athletes on here, not white. 5.
4 to the 10.
5 actually. 50% of this list, non-white athletes. That to me, I like to see.
Good point.
Very interesting. Now, Faheem, listen, you've been a great guest. Obviously, I love talking with you. But if people want to hear more from you, more from your co-host, Nelly J, tell us a little bit about the Good Rookies podcast and where we can find it and what we can expect when giving it a listen.
All right. Good Rookies podcast. It's a sports culture podcast talking about different topics. You can find us on Spotify, YouTube. We drop every Tuesday. We call it Good Tuesdays. It's about 45 minutes of just giving our opinions on sports, culture. My host or co-host, Nelly J, a very opinionated, very strong Black woman. And we play off each other pretty well. And I think we'd be a good listen once a week. Check us out, Good Rookies Podcast.
Excellent. And if you want to hear more and see more of Faheem, hopefully he'll be, joining NBA TV for some more barbershop style segments in the near future once that gets back up and running. But make sure you do check out the Good Rookies podcast, as well as the Big O podcast, available on Apple Podcast, Spotify, Google Podcast, or wherever you get your podcasts, with full videos and full episodes available on YouTube. So make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you subscribe for future episodes and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. For my guest, Faheem "The Dream" Francis, I'm Julian Ortiz. Thank you for watching and listening. See you next time.